Good evening, folks, and welcome to the 27th meeting of the 25th City Council. We'll call this meeting to order. All of our councilors are present this evening with the exception of Councilor Bassan, who's joining us by Zoom, and Councilor Benton, who will be excused until he's not, and he'll be joining us in a few minutes. Madam Vice President, would you take the floor?
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, we'll have a moment of silence and then the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilor Lewis, and then the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish by Councilor Sanchez. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Civic Plaza parking passes are provided for members of the public. You can obtain a parking pass from council staff at the table near the chamber entrance. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting in person and on live streams through 4 different platforms: GovTV on Comcast Channel 16, the GovTV website, YouTube, and Zoom webinar. The live streams can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. Also, this meeting is closed captioned, and you may enable the closed captioning services on your television or device at this time. The video recordings of this and all past council meetings will remain available for viewing at any time on the City Council's website. Council staff is available via telephone if members of the public need assistance finding the videos online. Please call 505-268-3100 for assistance during business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The council will take a break at approximately 7 p.m. this evening if needed. With regard to the decorum in the chambers, we want tonight's proceedings to be as civil and respectful as possible. Please do not make any personal attacks and please no applause or other outbursts during the meeting. The meeting will go a lot smoother if we are respectful of one another. At this time, we have proclamations and presentations. Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I think the first proclamation that we have on the agenda is Women's History Month, and here to accept the proclamation is Hannah Albee, Chris Peck, and Dana Bell to accept. And as they're walking to the podium, I just want to say, so they're with the Barrett Foundation. The interim executive director and director are here, as I stated, and then we have all the counselors that have agreed to join in. And I know that it's kind of towards the end of the month, but better late than never. So I just want to thank you for being here last year and this year for accepting this proclamation. With that, we will start with the reading, and I think we're starting with Councilor Lewis. As he's locating it, I just want to say the Barrett Foundation serves approximately 300 women and children each year and provides 34,000 meals, more than 11,000 bed nights, and over 1,000 hours of case management to help obtain stable housing. Councilor Lewis.
Whereas National Women's History Month was established in 1987 as a way to celebrate women across the nation and their efforts to make the country and the world a better place for women of all ages and races.
Whereas women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and
whereas women play critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every sphere of life and constitute a significant portion of the labor force by working inside and outside the home, and
Whereas women from all walks of life have served as early leaders at the forefront of every major progressive social change movement, and
Whereas women in the United States have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist emancipation, industrial, labor, civil rights, and peace movements. And whereas in 2018, the City of Albuquerque created the Office of Equity and Inclusion aimed at addressing racial disparities and achieve equity in local government, including gender inequality, and
Whereas the City of Albuquerque partners with local service providers like the Barrett Foundation that have a mission to end the experience of homelessness for women and children in our community by providing shelter, housing, and supportive services. And
whereas in 2020, the Albuquerque City Council enacted an ordinance ensuring pay equity reporting requirements as part of the city's procurement process. And
whereas the City of Albuquerque has not only taken on a variety of initiatives aimed at supporting women, but the community has a rich history of remarkable women leaders, entrepreneurs, business professionals, educators, and many more who have significant contributions to ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of women residing in our community. Be it proclaimed that the City Council, the governing body of the City of Albuquerque, hereby declares March 2023 Women's History Month and proclaims March 8th as International Women's Month. So thank you for being here. I don't know if you wanted to say a few words.
Well, first of all, it's just such an honor, and I'm humbled to accept it on the behalf of all the case managers and resident advocates at Barrett who work so hard to help women experiencing homelessness find stability, find their goals in life, and reach them to make a difference to the community. So thank you for honoring all of the work that they do.
I just wanted to thank the council for this recognition. I am humbly serve on the Barrett board as a board member, but it's really the work of our employees and members of the community that contribute to the success of Barrett and all that they do for the women in our community. And so I'm appreciative to our staff.
Counselor Pena, one more.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We actually have several folks from Recuerdo Cesar Chavez Committee here to accept the proclamation. So with us, I don't know who's going to come up to speak, but I have several names, and I know everyone's not here, but in solidarity, I'm going to say everyone's name. So we have Linda Garcia Benavides, Valerie St. John, she's not here, and then members of the committee, Lala, Chuy, Beatriz, Josie, Anna, Rosendo, Callie, and Jean. So if you want to come up to, and we'll start reading the proclamation. Do you all want to come up together or just? And so we'll get started. As you're coming to the podium, Councilor Feeblecorn will start.
Thank you. Whereas Cesar Estrada Chavez was a migrant farm worker during the Great Depression and experienced harsh working conditions faced by many agricultural workers, and Dolores Clara Fernandez Huerta continues to fight the harsh working conditions faced by many agricultural workers. And whereas Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta have dedicated their life's work towards pursuing equality, justice, and dignity for all Americans, and whereas Cesar Chavez left behind a legacy of humble service and extraordinary achievement, Dolores Huerta continues to this day to fight for equality, justice, and fairness for all Americans. And
whereas in 1994, Cesar Chavez was awarded the Medal of Freedom. In 2012, Dolores Huerta was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. This is America's highest civilian award. And whereas Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta gave our nation and each of us a unique example to live our lives by, a selfless dedication to the rights of all workers, to economic justice, civil rights, environmental justice, peace, nonviolence, and empowerment of the poor and the disenfranchised. And whereas Cesar Chavez died, local community members established the Recuerdo Cesar Chavez Committee, whose mission is to educate people about the life and work of these great American leaders and to encourage each of us to carry on their values and timeless vision for a better world. Today, Dolores Huerta carries on the work to honor the values and the vision that they aspired to and have worked tirelessly towards the vision for a better tomorrow. Be it proclaimed that the council, the governing body of the city of Albuquerque, hereby recognizes and shows their appreciation for Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and their work legacies as we celebrate the 30th annual celebration of their work on March 25th, 2023. Thank you, ladies, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Linda Garcia Benavides. I'm the chair of the Recuerdo Cesar Chavez. Valerie St. John is the vice chair. She was going to be here, but she ran into some car problems, and so several others were going to be here as well. We are so honored and so appreciative for getting this proclamation. This is the 30th annual celebration of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta on the work, the only one in the nation that celebrates Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. And we're also going to have it at the National Hispanic Cultural Center, which is also the only one in the nation that has a center of this type. So Dolores Huerta is going to be here this coming Saturday to join us. She's going to be 93 in April. And she is going to do, we have what you call the Marcha de Justicia. So she's going to march with us. It's about a 3-mile march. And then we have the fiesta celebration afterwards, where we have entertainment, celebration, awards. She gives out what you call Si Se Puede awards, and we'll be doing that as well. So we want to thank you so very much for honoring us with this proclamation, for honoring Cesar and Dolores. They, Cesar worked tirelessly. Dolores to this day works every single day for civil rights, for human rights, for equal rights. And in fact, when she comes in this weekend, she's coming in from DC, where she's out there doing another type of program for equal rights. And then she'll fly in Thursday night and be with us this weekend. So we hope all of you will come and join us. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts for this. And to my right, I have Lala, who's our event coordinator. To my left, I have Beatriz, who is our liaison with the city. And some of the others that couldn't be here are very instrumental in what we do. So thank you once again. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You want to come up and get your proclamation?
I think Councilor Benton had a comment. Okay, well, we could do that after, so. Mr. President, as we're gathering for a picture, I know Councilor Benton wanted to add something, but I actually wanted to thank Councilor Benton as well. I know we worked on an initiative, I want to say just last year, but it's probably already been 10 years, but no, it was a few years back, of actually naming Bridge and Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, and the only place in the nation where it crosses itself. So I want to thank Councilor Benton on his leadership on that.
Thank you, and Councilor. And yeah, it seems like 10 years ago, but I think with the pandemic, it was probably only about 4 years ago, but it seems like 10 years ago. Yeah. And also, I wanted, for anyone who's watching who didn't know, Dolores is from New Mexico originally, and she was the daughter of a miner in northern New Mexico, a coal miner, Dawson, New Mexico, so we have that great connection to her. And I look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
So we'll gather.
Okay. right. Okay, moving on. We are on administration question and answer period, and I'm going to ask Counselor Bassan, who's on Zoom, to start us off.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I have a quick question for admin. So I know that I believe that the current interest or the inflation rate that's been reported up to February 2023 is about 6%. The mayor went to the District 4 coalition meeting this last week and reported to everyone there that we're expecting about 100 new police officers this year coming on board, which I think is very exciting. And that at the same time, we're about to lose probably about 80 individual officers who are leaving the force, which is a bummer, but we all knew that as well a little bit. What he also said was that we need to make sure that there's more investment made in retention rather than recruiting. And then later on went to say that the city budget is flat. It's currently approximately flat, but does not include pay raises for police cadets. I know that we're not part of the negotiation process. However, I am hopeful that we're going to have some confirmation tonight that we are anticipating that we're going to be able to give some police pay raises, not just to cadets, but on the officers who are still working in the force. Will the administration please explain kind of their desire or their plan? Are we going to be giving some raises to retain the police officers like the mayor was indicating or sort of implying we should be doing?
Council President and Councilor Bassan, we are focusing both on retention and recruitment. We do have the money. We have a very robust program to retain and recruit. As far as the cadets, I think we are looking at their salary, and I should not be talking about it right now because the union negotiations are underway right now as we speak, including last Saturday. But we do have some substantial consideration for the cadets. I think it would be very attractive. I think you will like it. On top of that, the raises, we are still finalizing the budget. It is not a flat budget. Relatively speaking, yes, it is flat compared to last 3 or 4 years. However, we do expect 2.4% growth in our revenue. So that would obviously will be spent in the expenditure. So the budget is relatively flat, but it's not completely flat. And I think I answered all your questions.
Ms. Vice President, Mr. Baca, thank you so much for answering that. And it is encouraging to hear. I also am encouraged to hear that the mayor was saying we do need to, focus a little bit on retention, not just recruitment. So, I realize that we can't get into details, but I just would like to make sure to express my support to ensure that we really do focus on what can we do. I know that we've been focusing a lot on how do we recruit more officers. We need more officers here in Albuquerque. Everyone knows that. But some of the other conversations I know we have, intermittently are including how do we retain the officers? So I certainly would hate to lose sight of finding the balance of any kind of wages and compensation that we should be able to do in order to make sure that we retain those veteran officers who really can lead and guide some of the new cadets. So I'm excited to hear both that we're going to be, that the mayor is prioritizing and saying that there's an importance on retention, and that you're saying that we are not probably as dire as I was starting to paint in my head. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. Councilor Lewis?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Comment first, just from what Councilor Bassan just said. I don't see any priority of this administration whatsoever in increasing the ranks of our of APD, especially when you have the mayor make comments that hiring police officers is unrealistic and old-fashioned. So an administration that makes those kind of statements, I have a hard time believing that this administration has a priority on hiring new police officers. The budget reflects it. I mean, you asked for 1,100 police officers every year. I'm assuming you're going to do that again this year. But we are far from that. So how does administration prioritize hiring new police officers when we have a leader, a mayor, who says that hiring police officers is unrealistic and old-fashioned?
President Davis and Councilor Lewis, I think it's a matter of interpretation. What he said, there are different ways to interpret what he said. But in substance, as you can see, there is money in the budget to hire more officers. On top of that, we have a very robust program for hiring bonuses. We were also hoping that the state would pass return to work bill. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I think you will like the budget that we will propose because it has substantial consideration for the cadets. And I think that's where we should be focusing on. In long run, I think we should focus on the classes. And I'm sure we have someone from APD and they can go into detail what exactly we are doing right now. But everything we can do, we are doing. One thing is that we are competing with everybody else. So there is a limited pool of people who want to be cops, and then there are a lot of people who are hiring them. So we are focusing, but we are open to any ideas that you have specifically have for the APD and would love to incorporate that in our efforts to hire more police officers.
I appreciate it, and I know there's you're making some good efforts, and I know it's hard to speak for your boss, to be honest, and especially when he makes statements like that. Anybody here from Economic Development tonight?
I don't think so, but we didn't know that you would have questions, but I'll be happy to try
Sure.
to answer your question.
No, I certainly have a few questions. And first of all, would you comment on, would you just give the status of economic development right now of the department? And just with this comment that, it's 5:30 in the evening. It's 5:30 on a council night. And I realize that not everybody from every department could probably make it to every single council meeting. But I don't think it's too much to ask that every department should send somebody at 5:30 in the evening, when you probably get off work about 5 o'clock, to be here at this council meeting, especially a department like that, that I think has a lot to share, hopefully has a lot to share. I mean, would you just give the status on that department, the leadership?
President Davis and Councilor Lewis, sure. So Max Grunner is the new director. Unfortunately, he has taken some time off because of the spring break. And Chris Chavez also is not around because of the spring break week. Generally, they are here in every council meeting, and I see them almost every day in the office, so I believe they are around, but today is just not the day that they are here, unfortunately.
Sure, hey, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of lieutenants in that office as well, too, and I would think that at least one person could be here representing that department. But yeah, I did want to ask about something related to that department. Heritage Hotels proposing pretty significant investment, continues to put a pretty big investment in the Sawmill, Old Town District there, coordinating with the city and the county. Heritage submitted an application last year, I think it was about December. And I don't think, well, obviously it's still not made its way to the council. I think the next step was that it would go to the Albuquerque Development Commission. But if you'd give us, and Sanjay, if you'd like to, if you could give us a status of that request, when we could expect to see that at the council. Just give us a status on that project.
Sure. President Davis and Councilor Lewis, I actually met Mr. Long in December. I'm not intimately involved in this particular process. However, during the initial review of the application, we kind of saw a couple of things which were concerning. So I met him in early December, and I pointed out that, they initially when they met us, and this was almost more than a year ago. They did not want anything from the city. All they wanted is that they would have some sort of fast lane as far as permitting at the planning department. And Mayor and Lawrence, they were very amenable to that. Then, because of the interest rate changes, they had issue putting the package together, and they wanted some gap financing, and that's why they came back to us and wanted some GRT back. So this is more like a TEED kind of scenario. And in their application, they showed that they would want the GRT generated by Hotel Albuquerque, Hotel Chaco, and also the Sawmill Market, the food hall. And that's when I had issue with that application. I told him in person that this is very unusual. It is not something we approve because we already are getting this GRT, and that is budgeted for our operation budget. And he realized it right away, and he said, I think that's a mistake, and I would correct it. That was in early December. After that, I briefed the economic development director. I believe they had conversation, but I had not heard back from both of them. So I'm understanding that they might be revising their application to take off Hotel Albuquerque, Chaco, and Sawmill Market from the GRT payback.
So what is the status of it right at this moment? I mean, that was December, so about 3
Yeah.
months have gone by now. What's the status of it right now?
Councilor Lewis, I think the status, in my opinion, is just we are waiting for them to revise the application and provide us revised, updated financial statements, which would take off those 3 properties that I just talked about.
Okay. So I do understand that the county has given a significant amount of, I guess, intention to support, the project, and has already made some decisions with assistance, but they're also trying to coordinate with the city without success. They've not been able to really succeed in coordinating with our department. Is that true?
Not that I'm aware of that. We actually like this project. I have seen the plans. It would be a great addition to the city, especially because it would have some housing as well. So we are supporting this project. However, the financials have to be accurate, and that's where we are waiting for.
Sure, I understand some due diligence there. I mean, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fair. But it looks like, I think the city's in the driver's seat on this. I mean, it seems like the department there would be in the driver's seat, with the applicant here. So I can't imagine that we would in any way sit on our hands and let time go by without working on it. It seems like that's what's happened, kind of weeks have gone by and without some resolution and a step forward, a way forward. So I would imagine that would be the posture of the administration, and with this kind of investment in the city, you don't see a lot of this come along, but certainly is something that at the very least that we should, we're in the driver's seat on it, and we should move forward with working it out. It seems like it's as simple as checking those boxes and then sending it on to the Albuquerque Development Commission, which would in turn send that on to us. So would you have any idea of when you would expect that we would see it?
President Davis and Councilor Lewis, I don't know what Heritage Hotel is thinking right now or what they are working on. As far as I mentioned, we told them what's wrong with this application. He agreed, and that's where I would leave it. But I would certainly have the Economic Development Department to contact them tomorrow and see if there is something which they think it's in our court. And if that's the case, we will clarify the misunderstanding.
Okay, I think that's fair. I would imagine that we would have those kind of conversations, that we would reach out. Again, we're in the driver's seat on this, that we would reach out and we would have continual meetings until we, at least found a way forward there. So, thank you.
Sure,
Thank you,
thanks.
Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Counselor Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I have a question, and I notice Mr. Rael's not here, and I sure wish that Mayor Keller was here in chambers so we can address this question straight to his face in reference to what's gone on in reference to the letter that was sent by Mr. Rael to the rest of my city council in reference to me having some inaccuracies. And one of the things that I don't understand is how you could say it's inaccurate when the Department of Finance and Administration of the state of New Mexico, and what we're talking about is we're talking about the turf that's in Rio Rancho, how the Department of Finance and Administration and both our own OIG have made it clear that spending the funds violated the anti-donation clause. Both sides of the city apparently both of these entities said that the city has clearly broke the law in reference to this. And why are we spending, $250,000 for an entity that's in Rio Rancho and that is literally 30 miles away from my district high school? This is something that is very, very important to all of us. And also, we're talking 40-minute drive from the nearest high school in Counselor Grout's district. So these are very, very concerning things, and we still have not seen any type of evidence that states that any consideration has been met in reference to these issues. I just think it's very, very bold, and I know who has the marching orders on this. I know it's not you, and I know it's not Mr. Rael. I'm sure the marching orders came from the mayor himself in reference to writing this letter. But if this letter is talking about transparency, then I think it's very important for us to see any type of documentation that's dealing with consideration. I asked the AG to investigate to see if there's any wrongdoings. This letter implies that I am stating that there's wrongdoings. So what we're doing is we're going by the investigations that were set forth, one by the DFA and one by the OIG. And right now, I think it's important that the mayor answer to council in reference to the letter that was written by him with his administration.
President Davis, Councilor Sanchez, those investigations may come to conclusion which we may not agree with. That's the case here. We provided all the documentation to OIG. She chose to not consider all of them. That is something we don't agree with her. When we spoke to DFA, when we applied for that funding at that time, it was rejected because it was in Rio Rancho, and we have always said that all this time the intention was to have this turf in Albuquerque, and that's what we are working towards. I think this was the best option in eyes of administration at that time, to kind of use the turf somewhere in the metropolitan area rather than just putting in a warehouse.
If that was the question of somewhere, and we don't have a somewhere to do it, don't you think that somebody in the administration should say, we don't have a place for it, so we can't do this right now?
Councilor Sanchez, I think the timing might not be in our favor. I'm not too sure exactly when this happened, but it was too late not to buy it, because when the procurement was initiated at that time, we thought that it would go to Tingley. But when the actual thing arrived, Tingley was not available, it was closed due to pandemic. So therefore, it went to Rio Rancho. But again, I would like to reiterate that we are still working to find a place in Albuquerque, most likely in Tingley. And as far as the AG, this investigation is done by OIG. It has been done by Mr. Barker, and we will cooperate with AG also, whatever they want. We already have provided our legal analysis to them. And if they want something more, we certainly will engage and work with them and cooperate with them.
Well, I think it's also important that we as counselors see if there's any evidence that is said the consideration was for. Is there any evidence to that? Here we are, we're going through this more than a couple of weeks now, and none of us have received any kind of evidence as to the consideration that was actually stated that we had as a city of Albuquerque. I don't see any documentation about any youth sports programs being handled out there. I don't see anything in reference to the consideration about the 50 tickets that were supposedly given to youth programs. Again, these are, 45-minute drive time to get to that location to use it. I'm really concerned that I don't even think anybody from Albuquerque would drive that far for a youth sports event based on just the fact of getting out there. Even to do a practice session, it makes way more sense to practice here than to go out there and practice on the field. So I'd really like to see some sort of documentation, but of course I've been asking for police numbers the whole time. I very, very much don't think I will get that, because anything that we ask for up here from the administration or Mayor Keller's administration doesn't ever come back to us. So what he's done essentially is alienate this entire council against him or the administration, because all we're asking for is transparency. Another thing is, if there's transparency in reference to the data that we're looking at, then we would be able to see what's going on in one Albuquerque fund. If that book is funding one Albuquerque fund, then we should be able to be transparent in reference to that whole entire fund as well. So that's another thing that we should be asking for as counselors. It's just really, really sad that that these things are going on. Also, we still have that payout of $40K without a lawsuit. I think it's important that the citizens of Albuquerque understand where that money went and why. We still don't know. We're still wondering where $400,000 is paid out, and we don't even know what it was for. So those are the things that need to be looked at in reference to transparency. Where is the city's money being spent? And from what I've seen is us as council, we don't know. So can you explain any of that?
President Davis and Councilor Sanchez, the One Albuquerque Fund is actually part of our financial statements. It's a foundation. However, with the auditors, we kind of went through the steps how it should be presented in the financial statements. It was their recommendation to present as a special revenue fund, which is what it is in the financial statements. It's audited. As far as the $400,000, I think our city attorney mentioned last time that those names are confidential and you are not allowed to discuss that, but I'm sure there might be a mechanism that you personally could be briefed on that, and I would have our city attorney answer that question.
Yes, Councilor President, Councilor Sanchez, I would be happy to discuss that in a closed forum. I generally can't discuss individual cases within this public forum. But again, I guess to reiterate the things I said last time, We make an assessment of the value of a case as it comes in. Sometimes I do recommend that we settle before a lawsuit is filed. Sometimes that is the most advantageous thing that the city can do, and that's what we recommended in this case.
The thing that worries me is that we have some sort of director that did something that was so egregious that it cost the city $400,000, and that you read it and then paid it off that quickly, without a fight, without even knowing, without us even knowing what was going on. And that's really concerning to me.
Councilor Sanchez, let me interrupt, if I may, just privilege of the chair. Let me remind us that although there may be a settlement in this matter, that if it's a legal matter, we generally don't discuss those here, but we have the option to pursue them in executive session with the administration, and we have a settlement advisory board that does that. So I just want to be careful that we don't publicly discuss those allegations if we have a process for it. And although there may be a settlement and there may be some disclosure requirements at some point in the future, I want to acknowledge that I don't know what this is about either. But
Yeah.
we have an option to do that with the administration and our rules before we would come and have a public discussion about that.
Thank you, Mr. President. And yes, we can sit down and have that discussion, but I think it's something that every one of us should probably sit down with you in reference to that.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor Sanchez. Counselor Pena?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This is just a few questions. There was, and this can be answered later, I think for APD if they're here or if somebody wants to take some notes. There was an article in the local newspaper about ShotSpotter, and I think it's awesome. And I just wanted to ask some questions because I know we had acquired some money through state capital outlay for District 3 ShotSpotters. So my question is what's the total amount that's been spent on ShotSpotter? And then how much does it cost to install, purchase each ShotSpotter? How many are located in District 3? And how many have been placed there after 2021?
An answer for you, but I will be happy to get it to you, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can get that to me as soon as possible, because I just want to make sure. I know that, you know, I'm a proponent of it. Sometimes, you know, I love data. I think data is such an important tool, but sometimes data doesn't really work when you're looking at like community safety and how neighborhoods feel when they feel that they have this sense of security with ShotSpotter there, and how it has actually helped neighborhoods like the one I live in, which is the most amazing neighborhood in the city of Albuquerque, but we have our set of issues, and where we were hearing gunshots on a regular basis. And then to have ShotSpotter and know that these random shots have decreased in the neighborhood, I think because of a sense of them being there. And I know that they're not crime-fighting tools in the sense of you get a call and you find a smoking gun, but I know they help in that sense of community peace. And then I do know that when you do pick up the casings, whether it's immediately after or shortly after or sometime after, I know that those are used and stored for other potential cases that are coming about. So just wanted to say that because I think that since we've put them in District 3, I know they were there initially. I think one of the test areas was actually in the perimeter of Central and Coors, which happens to be near my home. And then after some of the neighborhoods and hearing back from them how they felt like it's decreased in their neighborhoods, we advocated for some additional dollars. And I just want to make sure that they're going in District 3. So.
Yes, President Davis and Councilor Pena, it has been a successful program so far, which is why we want to expand it. We do use it as a crime-fighting tool. We do respond to those calls immediately when we do get a ShotSpotter call. It is actually a very high-priority call for us. We do collect those shell casings. We do put them through a NIBINS to see if we do have any match for guns currently, or later on down the road if we do arrest somebody with a firearm, and we can compare those later on. But I'll be happy to get you those answers probably tomorrow, ma'am.
Thank you, I appreciate it, because there was, I mean, it has subsided since I've been there, and I know that there was this one period of time where there was ShotSpotters, I don't know, like 4 or 5 days in a row. Somebody ended up getting shot in the corner of Baton and Sunset Gardens, and I know that they use ShotSpotter, and the officers came out to a lot of our houses to kind of see where those those cars were on the nest and, you know, all the technology that we have today. So I'd appreciate the information. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Counselors, any more questions? Okay, I have just a few. Jennifer Bradley, the Director of Purchasing. Hi there, thanks for being here today. Is there a competitive bid process for the city's office supply vendors?
So, President Davis, Councilor Grout, there are several options the city has for competitively priced office supplies. And I can answer in question 3 that you sent me, I can tell you which ones those are.
Okay. Is the price the only factor, or are extra points awarded for local businesses, women-owned, and such as that?
Mr. President, Councilor Grout, the purchasing ordinance has several applications of preference. One is the New Mexico resident business preference. We also have the veterans business preference, and we have Native American preference. Those are the 3.
The third? What was the third one?
Native American preference.
Okay, very good. Okay. And then my final question is, who is the city's vendor for office supplies, and is it a local business?
We have 3. We have 3 businesses. Can you hear me okay? Mr. President, Councilor Grout, we have 3 businesses. One is Mountaintop Office Supply, that's veteran and local. We have Sandia Office Supply, which is doing business as local. And we also have Stride and Diverse, which is also a local business.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that information. I appreciate it. Thank you. That's it. Thank you. Okay, and, Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. As I was looking through, it says you had advised that the One Albuquerque Fund has financial statements attached and it is audited. Now, if there's any funding going from that book to that fund, is that available and is that open to the public as well?
President Davis, Councilor Sanchez, can you repeat the question? I didn't get the last part.
You advised that that you have financial statements for the One Albuquerque Fund and it's being audited. And I asked if there's any funding from the book going to the if any funding or any money is being generated by the book, if it's going to One Albuquerque, if that is open to the public.
President Davis, Councilor Sanchez, I'm actually not aware of that, but I can look into that. But I believe Director Sanchez might be here, and if she knows the answer, I would. Okay. Thank you.
President, Council Davis, and Councilor Sanchez. For each book that is sold, $2.35 goes to the One Albuquerque Fund.
Okay, the question I had, is that available and open to the public?
Councilor Davis, Councilor Sanchez, I'm not sure I understand the question. Is it, are the records open?
Yes, the public records to the One Albuquerque Fund open that actually adds the $2 from the book purchase.
President Council Davis and Councilor Sanchez, I am not sure how they do their public reporting. They're a 501c3 to my knowledge, and they have certain reporting requirements, auditing requirements, and annual reporting. So I don't know that they specifically have to, by their reporting requirements, report on how much. We do get reports regularly on how many books have been sold through Amazon and through other booksellers, both here in town and in other places. So we can provide you information on how many books have been sold, which would tell us how much money has gone to the One Albuquerque Fund.
Okay, and can you give me a breakdown by book?
Council President Davis, Councilor Sanchez, I believe at this point, somewhere between 80 and 100 books have been sold through Amazon and through other booksellers. So that would be about $200 that has gone into the One Albuquerque Fund.
Okay, so I just needed to make sure if the money for the sale of the book that we produced for the mayor, if that book is actually providing, or if we're getting money from that, how much money is coming back to the city of Albuquerque? And also, is that fund available to look at and be scrutinized by the public?
Council President Davis, Councilor Sanchez, I would like to clarify that the book, the project, the documenting of 2020 is a project for the community. And I will say I'm very proud of what the author wrote. I think it's a very compelling and thoughtful and well-researched story of our community during 2020. So I know there are some concerns about how many times the mayor appears in some of the photos, but I believe that the text is a beautiful rendering of what happened during our city, both by the community members, business owners, neighbors, nonprofit leaders, and many city employees. So I don't see it as a book for the mayor. I see it as a book for our community, and I really, I hope that people will read it and maybe read the text and the storytelling because it's beautiful and it's powerful. In terms of the reporting on the actual generating of funds, as I said, $2, books are not cheap, and books are also not the way that we go about making money. And this was not a revenue project. This was a documenting history, documenting our stories of our community project. And so we never expected that it would pay for itself or that it would pay the city back for the resources we put into it. So again, when books are purchased on Amazon or by other booksellers, $2.35 goes back into the One Albuquerque Fund.
Okay, and with the One Albuquerque Fund, who else is donating to that fund?
Council President Davis, Councilor Sanchez, I do not know. I'm not a participant in the One Albuquerque Fund. I do know that many people donate. I donate $10 a month out of my paycheck to the One Albuquerque Fund for housing specifically. So I know that there's a lot of individual donors who want to see their dollars go to specific initiatives within the city.
And do they get split up by specific initiatives when you donate?
Council President Davis, Councilor Sanchez, I feel like I'm starting to speak outside of my expertise, so I think I'll stop before I get in trouble.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have just a few questions for the Aviation Department Director. Thank you for being here today.
Good evening.
Does the Aviation Department have any consultants on contracts?
Yes, they do.
How many?
We have 13 consultants on contract.
And what are they hired to do?
They go the whole wide spectrum. They go from doing architectural design, engineering design for our projects, to also doing financial and business consulting for us, and also just minor project management for the department.
Okay, thank you. Are any of these consultants or other contractors for the Aviation Department recent retirees?
I do know that on our current project, our major project, we do have a retiree that's been gone from the city for quite a while, and he is on the design consultant team to provide construction management services for us.
Okay. Was any of the retirees, did they have a 6-month waiting period?
His was well past the 6-month waiting period.
And he's the only one?
We do have currently 2 employees, other than that, that are through the temp service, contracting service for the city that we have identified during this questioning, and we're taking appropriate measures. They did not meet the period.
Okay, thank you. And then I did ask wanted to ask you some questions. You're going to send it to me later about travel within the aviation department. I wanted to know, see some names and job titles and find out what kind of city business they did and where they went and so forth, and how it affected the city, how it was going to impact the city. So I'll look forward to that list in the future.
Yes, we're putting that list together for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's it.
Right.
Any other
Thank you.
questions? Thank you. One more? Nope. Okay, thank you. That's it. All right, let's move on to the journal. I move approval of the March 6th journal. All right, we have a second. Ms. Hinojos, will you call the roll?
Councilor Bassan. Councilor Benton.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Benton? Yes. Councilor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Councilor Grout.
Yes.
Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Lewis.
Yes.
Councilor Pena.
Yes.
Councilor Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Councilors, we're now on communications introductions. Are there any changes to tonight's letter of introduction? Seeing none, Madam Vice President.
Mr. President, I move approval of the letter of introduction.
We have a second from Councilor Feeblecorn. Seeing no discussion, will the clerk please call the roll call?
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
Councilor Benton. Yes. Councilor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Councilor Grout.
Yes.
Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Lewis.
Yes.
Councilor Pena.
Yes.
Councilor Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilors, we're on to reports of committees. On behalf of Councilor Bassan, I'll report that the Committee of the Whole met on Thursday, March 9th, and reported out the following item. In the matter of R100, that it do pass as substituted and amended. I make a motion to accept this committee report. I have a second from Councilor, we'll say, Feeblecorn, who I heard first. Will the clerk please call the roll for the motion?
Councilor Bassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes.
Councilor Benton.
Yes.
Councilor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Councilor Grout.
Yes.
Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Lewis.
Yes.
Councilor Pena.
Yes.
Councilor Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Chairman Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Government Operations Committee met on Monday, March 13th, and reports the following items in the matter of R-102 and R-103 that they do pass. In the matter of O-65, that it be withdrawn. In the matter of EC-229, EC-230, and EC-234, that receipt be noted. In the matter of O-69, that it be without recommendation as amended. In the matter of O-70 and O-71, that they do pass as submitted. In the matter of O-74, R-107, R-109, and R-114, that they do pass and be acted upon at the meeting at which they are reported. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have a motion?
Yes, I make a motion to accept the committee reports.
Second.
Councilor Grout then on that one. Madam Clerk.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
Councilor Benton.
Yes.
Councilor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Councilor Grout.
Yes.
Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Lewis.
Yes.
Councilor Pena.
Yes.
Councilor Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Councilor Feeblecorn.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Land Use Planning and Zoning Committee met on Wednesday, March 15th, and reports out the following items. In the matter of EC 237, that receipt be noted. In the matter of 072 and 073, that they do pass as amended. And in the matter of 076, that it do pass, I make a motion to accept the committee report.
Second.
Counselor Grout offers the second. Please call the roll.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Counselor Benton.
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Counselor Grout.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Lewis. Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Counselors, there being no other committee reports, we're moving on to deferrals and withdrawals. Are there any deferrals and withdrawals from the council? Seeing none, we move on to consent. I think we have a few changes to tonight's consent agenda, so we'll get started. Are there any changes to the consent agenda? Counselor Bassan, do you have an item, and would you like me to present it, or would you prefer?
Mr. President, I have it in front of me, but if you want to do so for everyone else's benefit there, I would prefer it, please.
Sure. We're going to pull items G and K, which are 074 and 114, off the consent agenda. We'll return to those after our consent vote. I'm not going to read the titles because they're about 3 pages long, but we'll do that in a minute when we vote on them. Are there any other changes to the consent agenda? Seeing none, we want to thank all the individuals serving on tonight's, who volunteered to serve on tonight's boards and commissions. We appreciate your service and welcome you to the administration. I do want to ask really quickly, and I know that Mr. Bacta doesn't know the answer to this because it's not his department, but for the mayor staff that are helping us, could you make a note to just report back to us on the status of filling the remaining personnel board vacancy there? I know the chairman, I think, is still serving an expired term, and I think there are some folks coming up there, but we want to be sure that's an important board and keep that moving, and I'm grateful that you're moving Ms. Brown tonight. We're grateful to fill that position, and she's a wonderful person, but if that's okay, Mr. Bacta, we'll just ask them to report back. Great. Thanks.
Sure, we will, Council President, we will have Helen Maestas reach out to you.
Great.
And brief you. Thank you.
Councilors, any other changes to consent? Seeing none, well, we have a motion to accept the consent agenda,
I will second.
and we'll take Councilor Sanchez on the second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Counselor Benton.
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Counselor Grout.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Lewis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Councilors, Councilor Bassan had pulled 2 items from the consent agenda, and in the interest of expediency, since she's participating remotely, I'm going to note that 074 has a very long title that is sort of abbreviated by saying it is authorizing the sale of GO bonds not to exceed $34.3 million, consisting of $19.3 million in general purpose GO bonds and $15 million of short-term GO bonds to finance projects relating to public safety, citizen centers, parks and recreation facilities and equipment, library, museum and cultural facilities, storm sewers, streets, public transportation, affordable housing, and metropolitan redevelopment. I promise that's not the whole title, but it's good enough. I would move a do pass for Councilor Bassan.
Second.
Second from Councilor Grout. Councilor Bassan, I believe you have a floor sub, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. President. I would like to move the floor sub, please.
Second.
We have a second from Councilor Grout on moving the floor sub. That item is available in the iPads, councilors. Is there anyone signed up to speak on that item? Councilors, any discussion or anything from Councilor Bassan? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. Will the clerk please call the vote on the floor substitute?
Counselor Bassan. Counselor Bassan?
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Benton.
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn.
Yes.
Counselor Grout.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Lewis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Councilor Bassan, we've substituted your bill. Do you have anything further, or are you prepared to move forward with the vote? The motion's for a do pass.
Mr. President, I am ready to move forward. Please, I urge your support.
We have a motion and a second. I want to substitute. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Counselors, Counselor Bassan also pulled R114, which is item K from the consent agenda. That authorizes the giving of notice for bids for the sale of all those bonds, or the $19.3 million worth of City of Albuquerque, New Mexico GO bonds, Series 2023A. I'll move a do pass.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second for Counselor Grout. Counselor Bassan also has a floor substitute for R114 to correspond to the previous. We're going to move a floor substitute on behalf of Counselor Bassan.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Counselor Bassan, any comment here, or did we do it right?
Yes, Mr. President, just fine. Thank you so much. I urge your support.
Thank you, Counselor. Seeing no discussion, will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena, Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you, counselors, and thank you, Counselor Bassan, for your patience with us. Counselors, we're on to announcements. Counselor Feeblecorn.
Thank you, Mr. President. There will be an Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Government Commission plus APS meeting on Thursday, March 23rd.
I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead. Finish your
Excuse
announcement.
my interruption. We didn't get a do pass as substituted?
Oh, I'm sorry. Counselor, finish your announcement, and then we'll come back and do that.
ABCGC plus APS is meeting on the 23rd at 5 p.m. at the Bernalillo County Building, Ken Sanchez Commission Chambers at 415 Silver Avenue Southwest. This will be a hybrid meeting.
My apologies. Thank you to the clerk for keeping us on task. I thought we were going to do so well, and then it was my fault. Would the clerk please remind us of the motion that we need to do now? I think we just did the substitute, right? Okay,
Do pass as substituted.
great. We have a motion and a second.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes, thank you.
thank you. Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Davis. And that passes unanimously.
Thank you for keeping us on task. Counselors, we have no financial instruments this evening. Next up is our favorite portion of the evening, general public comments. Members of the public can provide live public comment to the City Council in person or virtually if you've signed up for public comment per our instructions published on the agenda and on our website on Friday. Here are the ground rules. Each participant has up to 2 minutes to present, and your comments must be addressed to counselors only through the council president. And as always, disruptive comment will result in removal from the meeting. There is a 2-minute time limit, and a bell will ring if you're here present with us in person to indicate your time is up. For those of you joining us by Zoom, there is a countdown clock on our Zoom, and you'll get a little noise there if you don't notice it, and we'll be sure that we do. And I'm excited to see that Mr. Schrader's back with us, and so good to see you again, and we'll get to you in just a minute. Mr. Cornelius, please call the name of our first speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our first speaker is Brian Feeger, followed by Barbara Taylor.
Folks, while we're doing that, some of you know this, but if you're next up, if you'll come on down to the batting box on the front row, we'll get you ready to go. Mr. Fair, good to see you again.
Hey, good evening, Council. Thank you all for your service. I'm just following up on my comments from earlier in the month. Afterwards, I had emailed the mayor's office, the chief of police, and the city council, and the only response I got was from Councilor Bassan, which was very much appreciated. So no one really likes criticism, but as a writer and as an artist, I thrive off of it. And I've always believed that elected officials, police officers, and local journalists would also benefit, which brings me to my favorite Carl Sagan quote: "Widespread intellectual and moral docility may be convenient for leaders in the short term, but it is suicidal for nations in the long term." One of the criteria for national and local leadership should be, therefore, a talent for understanding, encouraging, and making constructive use of vigorous criticism. And I know there's trolls out there and social media is bad, but conversation's a two-way street, which just brings me to my second point. Last time I talked about the success of the ACS and Gateway Center, but you're left with these really hardcore, addicted, and mentally ill people on the streets. One element of community policing is an increased use of foot or bicycle patrols, and I still have not seen that where I live downtown. There was a homeless man murdered yesterday under 1st Street and I-40 or I-25. And when I was downtown last Friday, there was a man starting fires at a bus stop, and there was a really unstable woman who I believe ended up attacking 40 city cars that day. So we're just asking for more patrols, just a presence by the police, and thanks again for having me. Have a great night.
Barbara Taylor, followed by Chris Smith.
Mandy. I have the hand.
Director Emeritus, welcome back.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the City Council. My name is Barbara Taylor. For nearly 2 decades, I worked in CIP, first as the capital planner and then as the CIP official. My comments tonight are regarding the 2023 GEO Bond Program. The GEO Bond Program is a needs-based program, and needs always far exceed available funds. The off-year planning process is a managerial decision-making process designed to identify the most important needs and to make the very painful decisions which align the program with the available funding. I want to highlight 3 problems with the committee substitute. First, the committee substitute was provided 1 hour before the meeting. Neither the administration nor the public had time to evaluate the changes, much less comment on them. Second, comparing the 2 bills, it is apparent that there is a marked tendency to raid generic projects. So I have to say, generic projects are not slush funds. Every one of these projects should have a sub-project list that informs you all on what the priority needs are. When you budget 2 years in advance, final costs are not usually known. Generic projects provide the managerial flexibility to accommodate inflationary pressures on construction costs, to handle emergencies, and they provide matching funds for state and federal grants. They also provide the flexibility to respond to you all when you have unanticipated needs. Reducing these funds will create impactful problems for the departments. Finally, the reduction of the 3% open space land acquisition fund is really painful. The 3% can be preserved, and Councillor Grout's desire for funds to rehabilitate.
Mr. President, as some unsolicited, perhaps, advice, but from a former CIP official, I'd really like to hear what else Ms. Taylor
Director,
has to
please
say.
continue.
Thank you. I'll just start the sentence over. The 3% can be preserved, and Councillor Grout's desire for funds to rehabilitate the Route 66 to Harris Canyon education facilities can be accommodated by simply expanding the scope to say that for the 2023 bond program, up to $1 million may be used for rehabilitation of the education center located in the Tajaras Biozone open space. And then we keep the funds to buy more land. And Councillor Sanchez, we have our eye on some land out west for you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Councilor Bassan, I believe you had a question or a comment.
Mr. President, I just would like the record to reflect that it was not only 1 hour before the meeting that the committee substitute was provided to the council. It was 48 hours or more before that it was provided. So please make sure that everyone is.
Councilor, I think you dropped off in your last sentence there, but I think we got the gist there. And Ms. Taylor, thank you for being here. I hope you'll be back at our future meetings. Next up, we have Mr. Smith. And Mr. Smith, just before you comment, I know we have some folks from Nob Hill tonight. I want to make just a blanket statement. I know you know the rules because you've been here a lot, but to allay any concerns, I understand that you and some other folks may want to comment on the general city process for approving or reviewing applications relating to cannabis issues. There is a pending zoning question before the city zoning hearing officer, I think, that may relate to this. So I'm just going to remind anyone here tonight that they can't speak about a specific application, but you can speak generally about the city process.
Understood, yes.
I know you know that for our quasi-judicial rules, but for other folks that aren't here as often, I want to remind them.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Davis. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to work with Councilor Davis over the years in a lot of projects in Nob Hill and along Route 66, so I've always appreciated support of local business. I am here regarding the IDO and how license approval process works for cannabis retail and consumption. Nob Hill is approaching double-digit cannabis businesses. We know about the 600-foot requirement. We've already had one conditional use approval at a previous ZHE hearing. And the fact that consumption requires a conditional use approval, but there's not a lot of guidelines around that. And so the general public does not get information, or adjacent business owners, about air handling or odor control as it relates to that application. And so that's pretty much my biggest concern, what I'd like to communicate to the City Council, and remind the ZHE that a lot of people put a lot of time and energy into coming up with that 600-foot distance. But I think we're missing the boat on what consumption looks like, and it's creating a lot of anxiety for the community and adjacent businesses in Nob Hill related to some of these applications. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. You've threaded that needle well. Thank you. Mr. Cornelius.
Our next speaker is Raphael, followed by Tad Numitsky.
Thank you for this opportunity. Traffic fatalities involving Albuquerque's vulnerable road users is frighteningly high. Over the last 24 hours, Councilor Lewis has suggested that the bicycle community must be more proactive in advocating for bicycle safeguards. I think it would be most beneficial if we could take this discourse to a more productive level. In the past 30 years, not only has the US not kept pace with the traffic death rates of Europe, Canada, and Eastern Asia, but has in fact reached a 16-year high for traffic fatalities in 2021. A great percentage of that increase involved vulnerable road users such as cyclists. In terms of the rate of traffic deaths per 100,000 inhabitants, New Mexico is ranked number 7 in the country. This is a shameful statistic we can and should do something about. The ways to reduce traffic fatalities are known, and in other states and countries, well implemented. Solutions such as creating bike lanes and reinforcing a culture of safety around vulnerable road users entails not only having bike lanes, but also implementing consequences for those who do not respect the purpose of those bike lanes. Reducing traffic fatalities is something we can and should do. This will benefit everyone in our community, as well as improve our city's overall image in terms of desirable places to live and visit. My purpose tonight is to ask the council to help us achieve better bike lane enforcement. Thank you.
Tad Numitsky, followed by Rory Ferranda.
My name is Tad Numitsky. Maliciously destroying private properties, axing people from own homes just because no electric or gas is on. Then fire department destroying, well, yes, homeless people setting. Fire department helping, destroying building, roof, windows, doors, and then not allowing even rebuild that for willing contractors or owners. Under this there is leadership, this director that is nothing short as Gestapo with his staff during Second World War, I remember, when Nazi confiscating animals, homes, and so on. Now, who are you? Nazi, nothing short as Nazi. Doing that. Yes, I'm filing lawsuit, and this time I will proceed all the way for all these crimes against most vulnerable, and also I had interest too in my associates to purchase property. So this time I won't give up. I won't go to federal court. Under state law, will be charged, and I will go through possibly jury trial. Thank you.
Rory Veranda, followed by Don Schrader.
How's it going? How you doing? So I'm the owner of Empire Board Game Library in Nob Hill. And I'm actually here tonight to talk about the cannabis consumption business that's going up down the street. And as I understand, I didn't quite understand when you're talking about the permit process, so I don't want to step on
Miranda,
that.
let me just make our rules clear, right? So the quasi-judicial process for zoning, as you know a little bit about from your own experience, says that you have to speak about that matter with our zoning hearing officer. They make a decision, and then there may be an option to appeal that to the city council, but we're not allowed to hear about that particular case until it comes to us through that process. So you can speak broadly about the city's process for applications and whatever, but if it relates to a specific application, such as saying one in your block or one in particular, we're not allowed to hear that, and I can't let you speak about it because it could prohibit the council from hearing that case if it gets appealed to us.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll just kind of talk more broad about it then. I just think that that the community and the business owners need some more time to talk about these businesses before they start opening up in Nob Hill. I feel like there's already at least 9 cannabis businesses from Girard to Carlisle, and I just feel like it's moving the Nob Hill into the wrong direction. And I just think we should put the brakes on and kind of look at it a little bit before we start opening with such short notices and not really much time for the community to react. That's really it. I had more, but I can't talk about it.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Miranda. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
You are welcome to participate in the zoning hearing whenever that is on that
It's
particular
tomorrow.
case, and we're not allowed to talk about that. But for the record, I'm not allowed, and I have to recuse myself, and I'll file that recusal with the city council, any of those applications, so I won't participate in that hearing or any appeals that come here. But
Okay.
please, I encourage you to get it on the record if you have an opinion that needs to be heard by the zoning officer tomorrow in that hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you guys' service. Thank you.
Don Schrader, followed by Joe Hastings.
Mr. Schrader, we're excited to see you. We thought you had abandoned us for the big fancy new gigs over at the county building, but I see you're back.
I am, thank you. No one on earth can explain why an all-powerful, fair, loving God would refuse to help millions of people begging desperately for help from war, starvation, slavery, floods, fires, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, family violence, rape. Jesus promised that God will help those who pray. Jesus said, "Not one sparrow will fall to the ground without your Father's will. You are of more value than many sparrows." I ask, are the disasters and atrocities suffered by millions for thousands of years according to God the Father's will? No God heard and helped millions of Jews, gays, gypsies, communists, handicapped people in the Nazi concentration camps and gas ovens. So why would I expect God to hear and help me? I was a very sincere young Christian preacher 56 years ago in Virginia and later Illinois. For many years, I prayed to, I preached about, I sang about God, my imaginary friend. I swallowed, I spread feel-good false advertising for God. With the help of many people, I slowly woke up. I was wrong. I apologize. I wish we had an all-powerful, fair, loving God who would help all begging desperately for help. But wanting that does not make it so.
Joe Hastings, followed by Chris Love.
I've got something for you. Can I give it to the clerk? Thanks. President Davis, Vice President Grout, I'm Joe Hastings, one of the co-executive directors of Explora. Explora thrives because of its strong public-private partnership with the City of Albuquerque through the Department of Arts and Culture. We'll wrap up this fiscal year with our best year ever. With over 90 community partnerships, we're on track to serve over 400,000 people. Working with the Department of Arts and Culture, we also just opened X Studio, our brand new teen center, which will provide youth and workforce development opportunities for over 6,000 teens a year. I come before you tonight with thanks and with a request. Explora is grateful for the city's support for our master plan to develop a cradle-through-career STEAM learning campus in the Old Town Sawmill area. X Studio Teen Center is the first phase, and now we're embarking on architectural design development for phase 2. And that's Brillante, Early Learning Center, which will provide full-time STEAM-based childcare for 150 low-income families, teacher training and workforce development for educators in partnership with CNM, and it'll be a resource hub for family wraparound services. Brillante has been included in the administration's GEO bond package at $250,000. We ask you to support this allocation and consider an amendment that would increase that amount. We've raised $4.5 million already in state capital outlay, Bernalillo County bond funding, and private dollars. A larger GEO bond package from the city would help us get closer to the $12 million we'll raise to get this done. We think we're on a path to, with our current fundraising, to break ground next year and get it done in 2 years. Thanks for your consideration and for your ongoing support. Come see us. We'd love to show you around and show you our plans. Thanks so much.
Chris Love, followed by Rahim Kassam.
Hi, Council, President Davis. As a member of the Paratransit Advisory Board and a service coordinator for a local DD waiver provider specializing in employment, I would like to thank you guys for the work that you've done on O2247 and allowing paratransit members or Sunvan riders to self-certify their disabilities. I have an individual who got hired at the beginning of August, and today is literally his first day riding the Sunvan because he had to go through their approval process, which took him more than 8 months. So I thank you guys very much for the work on self-certification and any assistance that I can offer in helping design that plan. I would be more than glad to help out. Thank you.
Mr. Love, thank you for your service on our board.
Rahim Kassam, followed by Debbie Conger on Zoom.
Rahim, welcome.
Hello. Thank you, Councilor Davis. Thank you, councilors. My name is Rahim Kassam. I'm a property and business owner in Nob Hill in Councilor Davis's district. I'm also on the board for the Nob Hill Neighborhood Association, but I'm only speaking for myself. This is in regards to cannabis consumption lounges. Currently in the process, when someone is making an application for a cannabis consumption lounge, they're not required to have any kind of air circulation plan. That's usually done after the fact. I'm here to say that it would make more sense if the air circulation plan was submitted at the same time, was required to be submitted at the same time as the request. And the reason for that is because it would alleviate some of the worries that nearby residents and businesses would have regarding the cannabis consumption lounges. Previously, even in non-consumption areas where there's cannabis retail, sometimes there is a strong smell of cannabis, and so that could be a problem. And so we just feel that if you updated these rules so that the plan was submitted at the time of the request, you wouldn't have as much concern and worry from the neighbors, and also people would be confident that the business was following the plan that they agreed to. I just, that's all. I just wanted to ask that you guys look at that rule and see about updating it to streamline the process. Thank you.
Debbie Conger, followed by Peggy Neff.
Good evening, President Davis and councilors. A couple months ago, I talked about zoning enforcement and the lack of personnel. I'm here to talk about that again tonight, and this is regarding Housing Forward. I came across a report. It was a vacant and abandoned housing task force from 2018 that was presented to the city council. And one of the city to do something to take care of abandoned and derelict properties so that it would not only provide more housing, but it would improve the neighborhood. So I think that is something that the city should look forward to. And one of the things in there I talked about was adequately staffing code enforcement, which that still needs to be done. And in addition, if Housing Forward is going to pass, a better job needs to be done about informing all the residents in the city about the zoning code, maybe ads in the newspaper and on radio, because a lot of people do not understand what it is about. And the ads need to be both in English and Spanish. The other thing is that there was a link to a website from an email that I saw about Housing Forward, and it says that casitas would be allowed if they were no greater than 750 square feet and there was off-site parking, but there's nothing in O2254 that talks about off-site parking. So if that's true, then the website needs to be updated, because one of the major concerns for neighborhoods like mine, and I live near Eubank and Copper, is that we already have instances of 4 cars parked in front yards. And the only way zoning is going to see that is to come by after hours. So that was just what I wanted to say. We still have an issue with code enforcement, and if Housing Forward is to go through, then we need to do something better. Thank you.
Peggy Neff, followed by Dale McLennan.
Good evening, councilors. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the mayor on his ability to motivate the planning department and in step this council to adapt a different, more expansive system of communication with the public and have discourse on substantive amendments. Without policy or law, however, these amendments also unfortunately fall very short of my expectations for good governance. Many community members for many years have been begging for substantive amendments to our zone code to be treated differently than textual and technical amendments. I attended a public meeting a few weeks ago to hear an explanation of Housing Forward, but I left with more questions than answers. I'm sure you must be aware these changes may require a ballot initiative to meet the standards for the thresholds for notification per our state statutes. It turns out that these suggested zone changes are even more than substantive. They're extraordinary. So I ask, where is the amendment to amend the amendment process for both substantive and extraordinary zone code changes? Without amending the amendment process, you continue to use a broken process and it needs fixing. You are looking the other way while the mayor's office makes its own rules for promoting amendments. This is a mockery of the defective IDO. What a mess we've gotten into. What are we going to do if we ever find ourselves with a mayor who promotes private corporate agenda instead of public social agenda? Won't any of you stand up to this sort of process change? The process is part of our protections. Please build it back. Without fixing the amendment process, it looks like you're willing and waiting for your own turn to get your amendments onto the docket. Talk about a need for transparency.
Dale McLennan, please accept promotion to panelist. Dale McLennan. Mr. President, that was our last speaker, and that concludes general public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Cornelius. Councilors, we're next up on our items. We have no appeals or approvals this evening. Our next item is final actions. Councilor Pena, R112.
Thank you, Mr. President. R23-112 is the City of Albuquerque project recommendations to the Mid-Region Council of Governments for inclusion in the 2040-2045 Metropolitan Plan and for consideration for federal funding in the proposed FY 2020 to FY 2025 Transportation Improvement Program for the Albuquerque Metropolitan Planning Area. I would move approval, and we have Mr. Tom Manacucci here to explain the bill.
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Councilor Benton. Councilor, Mr. Minicucci, is there anything on this, or Councilor Pena, anything further?
Yeah, Mr. President, members of council, Councilor Pena, basically this is the TIP resolution that we pass whenever it's time, whenever the city has sent projects for the most recent transportation improvement program that's now being prepared the next 5 years by the Mid-Region Council of Governments. The reason for it is that one, it is established by city ordinance, and two, one of the reasons for the city ordinance is that the federal government in its rules requires that any of your applications to the TIP have been established as city policy. I think as we specified in the write-up, we're a little bit outside of ordinance, and the reason, of course, being is that when the ordinance was passed in 2008, the TIP was managed by through the rules of the TIP established by the federal government and NMDOT, and the COG allowed for a system where several months before it was due, the organizations would know how much money was available and what they could apply for. Also, the rules didn't have as many federal restrictions on them. So basically, it was written that before at least 30 days before they were due, it would go to the council for approval. Starting around 2012, that all changed. New rules came forward from the Federal Highway Administration and NMDOT as subsequently from them also. And what that did was it kind of set up a system which was very dynamic for a number of years, where we didn't quite know exactly how exactly you prepared your TIP changed a lot. The result is that now it's basically the federal rules are such that you have to really prepare, and you have to prepare a project for a federal application, sometimes starting several years out, to see if it can qualify for federal government and if it's in place to be able to get an application in place and receive the money. The second thing is that oftentimes we do not know when the money is, how much money is available. Sometimes, I think this year it was 3 or 4 days before the applications were due. So we haven't been able to kind of follow our ordinance. So what we've had to do is after the ordinance is passed, or after we submit the applications, then we send the resolutions down. So what we're doing now is we're in the process of redoing the ordinance to more reflect it. And what we're thinking of doing is basically once a project looks like it could qualify for federal money, we would, early in the stages, even if the TIP isn't due for another year or two, we would probably send the project through a cleanup resolution to be approved. And then when it's time for the TIP, we would have all our projects approved. We'd send in the resolution, or we just send the applications in and then send an EC down to council to kind of more adjust it. We do think the TIP process is stabilizing to the point where we can write an ordinance that would somewhat reflect that process. So that's why it's in late. The TIP itself, the projects this year, basically because the federal rules are fairly strict on what we can and can't do, we're for the most part continuing existing projects that would include the Unser widening, the BRT on University, the widening of, continuing to purchase electric buses, and then a lot of generic accounts, continuing to build up our system of intelligent transportation system with our signals, and trying to continue to improve bus routes, bus stations and buses like that and projects like that. So that's primarily what is up in front of you today.
Thank you, Mr. Minicucci. Anything from the administration? That looks like a no. I see Director Montoya is here, but he says no as well, so.
Yeah, Council President Davis, I don't have any comment, but Mr. Montoya, if you have anything.
Director, they're going to make you come and do it anyway.
Mr. President, so the administration is in support of this legislation. We have a member that sits on the TIP subcommittee with Mr. Minicucci as well. So Debbie was able to compile this and present it. It was modified, I think 2 weeks ago when the bill was introduced. We were lacking some of the projects in there, so that has been corrected, but we do support it.
Thank you. Councilor Pena, Councilor Benton, anything to close? Councilor Benton.
Director, and Tom, I guess I'll just put this out there. What is our timeline or expected timeline for updating the ordinance? I appreciate the work that's been done here and how everybody's trying to roll with the punches here, but there's been a lot of uncertainty. I've been there for a lot of that over the years, and timing, of course, with the state DOT, et cetera. What does that timeline look like?
So, Mr. President, Councilor Benton, last week I prepared a first context draft. The next step would be for myself and Ms. Morris of the council staff. We'll get together with Ms. Bauman and go through that and see how that works, and if everything's that's a working plan. I'm sure she'll have to send it up her chain of command for their approval. And then once that's done, if our system looks good, then we'll go ahead and get a draft. I think Councilor Pena had indicated she'd be willing to sponsor, if I remember correctly. And Crystal Mayles wants to co-sponsor. Then we'll prepare a final draft and send it for introduction.
Thank you.
Councilor Pena, anything to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. I really don't have anything to close on. I just urge everyone's support. There's a multitude of projects in here that cover the entire city. So obviously things take time, and as you can see from some of the write-up, some of these projects won't even come online for another 6 years. So urge your support.
Thank you. The motion on the floor is for a due pass from Councilor Pena with a second from Councilor Benton. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
Councilor Benton.
Yes.
Councilor Fiebelkorn.
Yes.
Councilor Grout.
Yes.
Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Lewis.
Yes.
Councilor Pena.
Yes.
Councilor Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Councilors, the last item on tonight's agenda is EC 259. This is a attempt for, or maybe an attempt to override a veto. It's really a choose-your-own-adventure here. If a councilor wishes to attempt an override of the mayor's line item veto, you must make a motion to override. If no motion is made or if a second is not received, the mayor's line item veto stands. Also, if a motion is made, the second is received, but 6 votes are not obtained in favor of the override, it'd be a yes to override, the mayor's line item veto stands. Councilors, EC 259 is a line item veto of R 2291, adjusting FY22 appropriations for certain funds and programs to provide for expenditures, and adjusting FY23 operating appropriations and capital funds. If we have a councilor wishing to do so, I'll ask Mr. Melendrez to remind us exactly what item is done. But councilors, at this time, is there a motion to override? Councilor Bassan.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to override the mayor's veto of this bill.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second on the motion to override?
Second.
We have Councilor Grout. Mr. Melendrez, would you help me a little bit and just refresh our memory and remind us, since our budget chair is remote and it might be easier, and then remind us what a yes vote and a no vote do, and then we'll go back to Councilor Bassan on her motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The mayor, with his veto message, he sent down a veto of Section 10 of the bill, of the mid-year cleanup bill, and it was essentially an amendment into the bill that created the Section 10 that directed that the use of any vacancy savings within the fourth quarter of FY23 be limited only to personnel costs. That was the extent of the mayor's veto. So a motion has been made to override that veto. If that motion passes by a vote of at least 6, then that Section 10 will remain in the bill, and we'll transmit the bill over to the city clerk, and it'll become effective. If that motion fails to gain at least 6 votes, if you vote against the motion, that's a no vote, then the mayor's veto will stand. The mid-year budget bill will go into effect without that Section 10 that I just explained.
Thank you, Mr. Melendrez. Well done. We're going to go back to Councilor Bassan if you want to make any comments or in support of your motion, and then we'll go to other councilors and then the administration. Councilor Bassan first.
Mr. President, I would like to say, a couple things. I know that this was an amendment that was offered by the administration. when they believed that it was going to be an either or situation, as did I. I offered the First Amendment to our bill, which passed, which reserved the $12 million additional to take from salary savings from the first half of the fiscal year and move it into the reserve. So that way, if we needed money for different departments, they could come to us and they could ask the council for a reappropriation, and we could do that for them. The administration was very opposed to this amendment, and they really didn't want me to move it. At which point I asked, what would you prefer? And will you please let me know what it is? And I will let you know which of the two I will go ahead and move. The amendment before us, that is, whether there's a line item veto or whether we go ahead and override the veto, is what the administration proposed and gave to me. I believe strongly that in our current situation, and with all of the potential, whether you're on whichever side you're on, the potential for, if you believe that things are transparent and accountable, or whether you believe they're not transparent or accountable, I believe both of these amendments are possible to do. And if anything, I think that we should challenge ourselves as a city in Albuquerque to try this out. I believe that we can try it and see, because this potential amendment veto is going to say, for the last quarter of the year, departments, don't spend money on anything other than salaries if it's been allocated to salaries. That should be doable. And I know that we're a programmatic budget here in Albuquerque, but if you need more money, come to us as a council and ask us for the money, because we just put $12 million in savings for you. So with that, and if you believe that you're honest, transparent, and accountable, I believe we should try this out, because this will prove to everyone that we as a city, as one Burke, are accountable and transparent. So I really do, I know this is not my close, but this is my spiel. So I really do with that urge your support. And I believe this is possible on our behalf.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. I'm going to go to the administration, and we'll come back to councilors, and then we'll take our vote. Mr. Bakta, anything from the administration?
Council President Davis, thank you for the opportunity. I think, we need the flexibility. All the programs have metrics, and the departments are expected to deliver the services and be accountable. And as Councilor Bassan said, we would have preferred that you have that control in future, because you can control the future more than what's in past. However, we are okay with this $12 million fund balance, which the council wants to put us aside, and we actually have identified that. And we have identified more than $12 million, and we are going to actually use that for the fiscal year 24 budget. And it's a good idea in spirit. I think I'm actually agreeing with Councilor Bassan. We had a very good discussion with her. I'm proud to have a very good working relationship with her. And in good faith, we provided the alternative, and it was strictly an alternative. But again, it passed in addition to Councilor Bassan's amendment. And I think both of these amendments make sense. However, they make sense individually and not together. If it is taken together, it basically ties the department's hands to deliver what they are expected to deliver, especially in the last 3 months. As you know, the state has given 6% raise to their employees. We don't have that kind of money, so we are losing talent. And it's very difficult to hire people. As you know, in public safety, we are struggling. But it's not just stops at public safety. I'll give you an example of accounting. In our central accounting, there are 4 positions of principal accountants. They play a crucial role in reconciling the funds, especially during the end of the year. because they want to be ready for the audit come July 1st. And we have those 4 positions vacant, and there are no takers. I think we offer about $75,000, and we have lost people to out of state companies, to Sandia, to state. And I just had the discussion with the controller and finance director. It's going to be very challenging to hire someone to be ready for the audit. If we are late in the audit, it has its consequences. As you saw on Saturday, Santa Fe does not have their audits in time, and S&P is going to withdraw their rating, which is one of the worst things a city can face. I don't think we will be in that situation, but I'm just giving you an example what it means when we take the flexibility from the departments, especially in the last 3 months of the year. And as long as we are able to find that $12 million and put aside, I think this seems a little bit of an overkill. I think we will be hurting the departments, the leadership in the departments to deliver what they are expected to deliver. It is not just the people, but I'll give you another example of departments buy software. They buy subscription to renew the software every year. And we estimate all those things in a good faith. But, we kind of accelerate everything in the last 6 months of the year to deliver everything, to buy everything that was appropriated. In this environment, when we know, we all agree that the inflation is there, everything has gone up, everything, practically everything that we are supposed to buy or renew, the prices have gone up compared to what we thought 1 year ago around this time of the year. And we basically under budgeted, not knowingly, but that's what happened. So I urge your support to not dishearten the department directors. They need to deliver, and there is no way that they can deliver this when we already put aside 12 million plus from the first 6 months. The third quarter, we have 10 days left, so we can't do much about what we can do in these 10 days. And then if we take away those flexibility from last 3 months, essentially we are tying the hands of all the department directors. There was something else I wanted to say. 6% raise is something we cannot compete. We just have no money to match that. The other thing is that I understand that the council is willing to appropriate or reappropriate the money if there is a need. However, we have 3 months left. When we come to the council, and it's not council's fault, it's the process. It takes 2 months. By the time we introduce something, we ask for permission, it might go to the committee, it comes back to the council, and that's just a routine process. We have 3 months left. I'm not too sure how we can maneuver that in case we need some money. So considering all these facts and considering that we have actually put aside $12 million already, which would be very beneficial for FY24 budget, I urge your support to have this flexibility for the department directors, for them to deliver what they are expected to deliver. And they sometimes, they understand that the money they got is at the program level, and they will have to deliver. And they may have to, for example, for the principal accountants, I don't think we are going to be able to hire someone before the year ends. So we might actually have a contract with someone to come and help us out with the fund reconciliation and be timely as far as the audit. So considering all these things, public safety needs, homelessness, I urge your support to sustain the veto. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bacta. Seeing no other questions, I'll recognize myself and then go one more round and go back to the sponsor. I appreciate it, Mr. Bacta. Thank you. And no one else, I'll make this quick because I think no one can argue that I haven't been forceful in saying we need to do better about structuring our budget and our reappropriation from salary to operating. We've had these discussions publicly, privately. The administration has done much better in this last budget than we did in years prior, and thanks to your leadership and Ms. Yara and all of our budget staff, Mr. Davis, wherever he is, all of those folks. But at the same time, I understand the intent behind this, but I think that is better, in my opinion, done through the upcoming budget, which we should be receiving in about 10 days, the mayor's proposal for, and then it's this council's job to figure out how to do that. I think that is the appropriate place to put in some of those bumpers and put in some of those stops to say, no, you need to come back for this. I appreciate very much. I understand. We've all been frustrated at the long process for getting legislation through, but I might remind you that tonight's relatively, so far, short agenda is brought to you by our amended rules, the work of the administration and the mayor's staff to get us legislation timely and more early through the process with better staff, our staff's due diligence to get stuff ready for committee when it goes, and the hard work of everybody going into committee who's really done their homework to get those things out, where they get unanimous support and we get those on consent. And we've done tons of immediate action items where there's an exigent circumstance. So I do think there's a process for that. So I want to argue a little bit that we can't just say, well, the process takes too long. I just don't think that's fair. I think we have to have a better process. That said, I don't think it's, I supported the First Amendment. I didn't support the second, which is what this veto is for. I do think it's hard to make those structural changes in the budget, and with 90 days left, I think it's a chance for us to do that. And I love the administration's language that you recommended. It's kind of what we've been looking for a year and some change around holding dollars whole in salary and operating and having that conversation. And so I think that Councilor Bassan, in her role as a chair, was able to get some of that language that started a good conversation with the administration, and we should include it in our next year's budget. But I don't think it's here. So on the motion to override, I encourage my colleagues to vote no, so that we can take that $12 million that we agreed on, set that aside, work these differences out in the upcoming budget, and have a better process for next year. So I encourage my colleagues to vote no on this motion. Are there any other comments from other councilors before I go back to the sponsor? Seeing none, Councilor Bassan, it sounds like it is your close.
Mr. President, I do have a couple of questions to begin with. Mr. President, I'm wondering, so I was really aggressively asked not to move my amendment to move the $12 million into reserve by the administration. I'm wondering, why is the administration okay with leaving that amendment and not veto? How come the mayor didn't veto that amendment when they proposed this amendment, which they are now vetoing now? They adamantly worked to make sure I did not move that one, which seems to be the one most people are okay with now. Yet they offered this one and suddenly are backtracking on that as well. Why is it okay to leave my $12 million amendment and yet now try to veto their own amendment, holding them accountable and transparent for the public?
Mr. Bakhta, I think that's a question for you from Councilor Bassan.
Council President Davis and Councilor Bassan, you have a good point. I think I did not want to be disrespectful to you. And I think your amendment was introduced first and it passed. So I assume that the second amendment would not be introduced. As I mentioned before, both amendments have their own merits. And we can live with either of them, but we can't live with both of them. That is the point. And I think because your amendment passed first, I think it would be more prudent for us to veto the amendment, which is our own amendment, administration amendment. I think that that's more respectful. And that is the reason I think the administration chose to veto the second one, not the first one, which is yours.
Councilor Bassan, back to you.
Mr. President, Mr. Bakhta, I really appreciate that. As I respect you as well, I appreciate that you did not want to offend me in any way. However, at the same time, I do want to make sure everyone knows that while the day was busy and while I received the administration's amendment closer to the time council began after reviewing it, and although it was very short notice, I still made sure to respond to the administration and let them know that I was planning on moving both amendments. In addition to that, I made the council aware before we discussed either of these two amendments to please be thinking about both of them at the same time, even though we were going to be voting on one before the other, whichever it may have been. So while I appreciate the fact that we didn't want to offend me, I think it's also something that's worth noting that the council still voted in a majority to pass this, because I believe that they thought this was worth giving it a try. So I'm wondering how, also, my next question, Mr. President, is, Mr. Bodka, you said that both amendments are tying both hands of the departments if we're supporting this option of reappropriating the funds. So if we reappropriate the funds and we have to make sure that we do the 2-month or less process, I'm wondering, is that really tying both hands when we're really talking about, again, the primary thing of transparency here? I know that we're on a short timeline, but I believe that it makes sense that we should be able to try this. So actually, I'm going to say this is not my question. I just want to make sure it's rhetorical, that I don't see that it's tying both hands. And I certainly do not mean, and I said this before when these amendments were first being discussed before the council, I do not mean to demoralize any departments. I am not trying to dishearten any departments. But I think that flexibility for the departments in the last quarter, I think that's okay. But why was the administration so okay with it before the savings was moved? And now that we have money in savings and we're just saying, come before the council, work with us, talk with us. Let's know what you're spending the money on. And this is in light of some of the other topics that have been brought up tonight and recently. Some of the things the city has been purchasing have been without our approval. They're not something that we agreed upon when we were told what the programs were. So I'm wondering still, how is the $12 million in savings not okay now when it was okay, or it's okay now, but it wasn't okay then? I just think that we have a right to be able to say, come to us and make sure that we're tightening our belts per the administration's recommendation. Now I'm hearing we have a flat budget. A month ago, I was hearing we might be facing a significant shortfall. So per the administration's recommendation at the time, and I believe in our best interest as fiscal responsible government agency, we should tighten our belts. And per the public's requirements and their request that they have been asking for a very long time, be transparent. I believe that both of these will allow us to be transparent and responsible with the city's money. So I please urge your support.
Thank you, Counselor. Seeing no other discussion, we'll call the vote. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. As a reminder, a vote to yes will be for the override the veto. A vote to no would be to sustain the mayor's veto. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
No.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
No.
Counselor Grout,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
No.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
No.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
No.
motion fails on a 4-5 vote.
Thank you. The matter fails, and therefore the veto is sustained. Counselors, thank you very much. And for everyone attending tonight, I think we set a new record at 7:10. Reminder, we could do this every 2 weeks. So let's think about that going forward. We will see you all. This meeting is adjourned.